NATO sunt aici împreună și asigură cele mai importante garanții de securitate. Se vede prin aceasta că NATO este o organizație puternică, iar Marea Britanie este un partener strategic major pentru România. Vă mulțumesc, domnule secretar al Apărării, pentru leadership și pentru angajamentul persistent pentru misiunile de poliție aeriană întărite din România. Forțele regale britanice sunt alături de forțele aeriene române încă din 2017, de aceea salutăm în acest moment aceasta a patra rotație la Mihail Cogălnicianu a detașamentului britanic cu 4 avioane de luptă Eurofighter.
Secretary of State for Defense Wallace, ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you all. Today we are together at Mihail Cogălnicianu Air Base, united for the eastern flank and for strengthening the allied security of the Black Sea. The allied force resides in the unity of its members. The Romanians, the British and the citizens of all the other allied states must know that they benefit from the strongest security guarantees. NATO is a strong alliance. The United Kingdom is a major strategic partner for Romania. Thank you once again, Secretary of State for Defense, for your leadership and persistent commitment for the enhanced air policing missions in Romania. The British Royal Air Force has been with the Romanian Air Force since 2017. Today, we welcome the fourth rotation in Mihail of the British detachment with 4 Typhoon fighter jets.
Premierul Boris Johnson le-a vorbit recent deschis cetățenilor din Federația Rusă despre masacrele pe care rușii le fac în Ucraina, condamnând aceste atrocități abominabile. Războiul trebuie stopat, iar diplomația trebuie să redevină instrumentul principal pentru a rezolva această criză fără precedent. Am trecut împreună cu omologul meu, cu domnul Wallace, în această dimineață ultimele evoluții de pe flancul estic și din războiul din Ucraina. Și considerăm că invadarea de către Rusia a Ucrainei a schimbat semnificativ paradigma de securitate regională.
We're listening to a live press conference with the Defence Secretary Ben Wallace, who is in Romania. We're expecting him to talk about the attack this morning on the train station in Kramatorsk, where it's understood at least 30 people have died and more than 100 have been injured. It comes after he spoke earlier and said that the UK could do more and will do more, and they were increasing the number of RAF planes being sent to near the area. As I said, it's Defence Secretary Ben Wallace and his Romanian counterpart speaking at a news conference. Let's listen.
So far, rounds of negotiations have failed. This morning, I reviewed with my counterpart the latest developments in the serious security situation in Ukraine. Russia's invasion of Ukraine has significantly changed the regional security paradigm and the level of threat on NATO's eastern flank. We discussed the concrete support given to Ukraine in these extremely difficult times. The humanitarian hub in Suceava massively supports the collection and transportation of international donation for Ukrainian neighbors.
Pentru România, una din cele mai importante priorități este accelerarea înființării grupului de luptă a NATO. Este nevoie de consolidarea pe baze permanente a posturii NATO de descurajare și apărare, în special aici pe flancul de est și în mod particular la Marea Neagră. Salut cu această ocazie militarii celorlalte state care se află în prezent.
Well, we're going to leave this press conference for now and get a bit more on Ukraine, but we will come back to it as soon as Defence Secretary Ben Wallace starts talking. Now, more than 30 people, as we've been saying, have reportedly been killed at a railway station in the east of the country. The station was being used to evacuate civilians at the time of the attack, leading to further accusations of Russian war crimes. It follows a day where Vladimir Putin's spokesman dismissed such accusations as fakes and lies in an exclusive interview with Sky News. Ukrainian authorities say the attack happened at a train station in Donetsk, where thousands of civilians have been preparing to evacuate to safer regions as Russia focuses its troops on eastern Ukraine. Sky's Jason Farrell sent us the latest on the attack.
Well, we've had reports of 2 missiles hitting the railway station at Kramatorsk, which is in the Donetsk region of Ukraine. This is an area where officials have been saying that civilians should try to flee. There's concerns about an oncoming Russian invasion, a renewed invasion from Russia as they regroup and prepare to concentrate on that particular region in the Donbass to try and get gains there. So civilians have been fleeing those regions, and it would be expected that there would be a large number of civilians getting to railway stations, trying to get out of that region. We understand from early reports from the railway station that, according to operational data, they say more than 30 people were killed and more than 100 wounded. This would be people fleeing their homes, trying to get away from the conflict. And Dmitry Peskov, in that interview with Mark Austin yesterday, was saying that the Ukrainians were using civilians as human shields, discouraging them from leaving, he was saying. But these are Ukrainians who are trying to get out, trying to get to safety, apparently being hit on that journey by Russian missiles. That would be a very worrying development as Russia continues to deny causing civilian casualties in this conflict.
Well, let's get some reaction to what's happened in Kramatorsk. Joining me now is Svetlana Zalishchuk, a former Ukrainian MP. Svetlana, what do you understand about what's happened at the train station?
As you've said already, many people died, 30 people died, more than 100 people are wounded at the moment. As you understand, Russia is regrouping its troops, and Ukrainian military forces, Ukrainian leadership is expecting a tougher blow on the eastern part of Ukraine, on Donetsk and Lugansk region. So Kramatorsk is located in this Donetsk region, and many people are trying to get evacuated after this news in recent days. So of course it was packed. The railway station was just packed with people, with children, with elderly people, with a lot of women. And this is very cynical that these missiles have been shot on the railway station with so-called tactical operational missile complex. It's called Tochka. So they knew what are they going to hit. So this is unprovoked and unjustifiable attack, which is definitely qualified as war crimes.
So another really significant attack. What does it mean for the people trying to leave? What other options are available?
I think that people are scared and frightened at the moment. First of all, to stay where they are because they understand that attacks are coming, but at the same time to leave because they understand that there are no such things as green corridors, because green corridors, even when they agreed and guaranteed by Russians do not honor their commitments. And we know that already dozens, if not hundreds, people have been killed during this agreed evacuation processes. Railway actually so far has been one of the more or less kind of safe way of traveling. But at this point, we see that actually it is not. And at any moment of time, you can be killed, you can be hit by a missile wherever you are. And I also want to raise the issue, and this is my personal kind of question, rhetoric question, if you want. Today, Ursula von der Leyen, the president of European Commission, is traveling by Ukrainian train on Ukrainian railway to Kyiv. And I'm wondering, is it actually Russian sending a message to the leadership of Europe that actually, you know what, you can't be safe even if you are sitting on one of these Ukrainian trains?
Do you think it was the right thing for her to do, though, to take that journey?
Well, this is one of the problems that we face now in Ukraine, that Russians are fighting Ukrainians not only on the ground, that there is also battlefield in the information sphere. And you mentioned already, and you've shown these pieces of the interviews with Peskov and interviews with Putin, and they are denying war crimes, crimes against humanity that they are committing.
I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there. We're now going back live to Ben Wallace, the Defence Secretary,
I also
who's speaking in Romania.
Really, again, it's very easy in NATO to forget that the south of NATO is as important as the north. Very often the media focus comes on Northern Atlantic. But you know, the south of NATO, whether that's Romania or the Black Sea or Bulgaria or East Central Europe, is just as important. It's where we see Russia pose a threat, sub-threshold and sometimes directly in areas like the Black Sea, and often very aggressively challenge our exercising of freedom of navigation or indeed freedom to fly in our own airspaces. And that's why it's really important that NATO's leadership in delivering a message to Putin that the alliance is how we are going to stand up to his bullying and his threats. And I'm grateful for Romania's leadership in standing strong and tall in the light of a very aggressive Russia at the moment. Certainly they are on the front line. They are one of the countries such as Poland and Romania who are on the front line from the potential overspill or indeed a more aggressive Russia. The fact that Romania has sent troops to Poland to help in Poland is a tremendous sign of partnership and teamwork. And it is that partnership and teamwork that sets us apart from Russia, because we ultimately share the same values of democracy and freedom, rule of law, and freedom of the press. Something that sometimes politicians of all colours and all countries deal with, but it is one of the most important aspects of our freedom and democracy, a free press. And if you doubt that, just go and ask the people of Russia, who won't know why their young soldiers are coming back in body bags. They will be told some fictitious story. Not very far away this morning in a place called Kramatorsk, what appears to be Russian missiles struck civilian people queuing for trains to seek a safer place from the war. The striking of civilian critical infrastructure is a war crime. These were precision missiles aimed at people trying to seek humanitarian shelter. It's not the first time. In fact, it's sadly a repeat of many occasions when the Russian state, President Putin and his generals, seek to take the war out on civilians, civilian areas, and civilian national infrastructure. And whatever happens in Ukraine, we must not let the international community forget that. What Putin is doing today is building his own cage around himself. That sanctions and his activities must not be freely lifted to allow him to go back to his super yachts and normality. What we are seeing is a criminal endeavour on a free and sovereign country, and Britain and Romania and other NATO allies will not stand by and let that happen. I'm delighted to be here today as the Italian Typhoon Squadron hands over to the Royal Air Force United Kingdom wing. We will increase from 4 to 6 the aircraft based here to do policing. The fact I'm standing next to British and I think Italian and certainly Romanian allies shows that strength in the air. Italy, the United States, Romania and the United Kingdom are playing a strong part in protecting that domain under a Spanish commander from NATO, truly multinational. On the land, the United States, France, Belgium and Portugal will be coming here to assist and support on the land components. And finally, I'll say something about the United Kingdom's role. When all of this is over, people will ask who were there before it happened and who will be there after. The United Kingdom will be here after. The United Kingdom was here before in Romania and in Ukraine, and from the Barents Sea to the Black Sea, the United Kingdom will play its part in contributing to supporting the resolve and strength of NATO and standing up for all those values in Europe that we share. Thank you.
Mr. Secretary of State, I myself was under the time pressure. I do apologize for that. So, dear colleagues from the media, we are now opening the Q&A session. I would kindly ask you to try to limit to one question and no follow-up if possible. So the first question goes to BBC.
Duncan Kennedy from the BBC. A question for both ministers, please. An impressive show of force here this morning, but given that we all understand that Russia's building up its forces again now for another attack in Ukraine, do you think this kind of thing could be seen as a provocation, or do you think that NATO simply has no choice now but to demonstrate its force?
How do you provoke a man who's already invented excuse after excuse to invade a sovereign country and kill innocent civilians? You can't provoke him anymore. He is determined, at the cost of thousands of Russian lives, to prosecute an invasion of a country that he has no right to do so. He doesn't care about his own people. The idea he's going to care about whether we fly jets in our own airspace, not their airspace. No one's flying into Russian airspace, in our airspace, that is somehow provocative is I think, misleading. I think fundamentally, President Putin listens to strength. He listens eventually when the message and the truth gets through to his people, and he will listen to the consequences of what he has done in Russia and Ukraine. He will listen to the consequences of his sanctions. Where is the Russian economy now? Where is the ruble now? Where are his friends? If his friends are Belarus and North Korea and Venezuela, that's not a party I want to attend. That's not much of a friendship group worth having. And I think he can't be provoked anymore. He can be deterred, and we can help Ukraine defeat and push back his army from their aggressive moves. And if he thinks he's got away with it, he only has to look at the casualty rates of his young men that he sent unprepared with an arrogance to war in another country, and look at the losses of his army. Open source suggests they've lost 2,500 armoured vehicles. He's all in. He has put most of his Russian ground forces into Ukraine or on the border of Ukraine. And it doesn't look like it's gone very well so far. Yes, he will try and regroup. Yes, he will try and re-equip. But so will the Ukrainians, with the help of NATO allies and donors. They will be re-equipped. They will be resupplied. And the fundamental flaw in the Russian army hasn't gone away. Incompetent generals, arrogant planning assumptions, who don't care about the men they command. And not caring about the men you command, let me tell you as a former soldier, always ends up in the bad result, which is what they're getting.
Domnul Ministru.
Foarte multe din regulile care păreau anormale înainte de acest conflict, astăzi se schimbă.
Many rules which seem to be abnormal before the conflict now are changing.
Evident, se schimbă și lumea, dar se schimbă și cele mai importante reguli, inclusiv pentru Uniunea Europeană.
Clearly, the world is changing, and of course the rules, and also for the EU, the rules are changing.
Am văzut motivarea și hotărârile Uniunii Europene pentru a sprijini Ucraina militar, cu fonduri pentru cumpărare de arme.
I saw the commitment of the EU to support Ukraine with funds to equip militarily Ukrainian troops.
Era inimaginabil înainte, nu ne puteam închipui o Europa care să facă asta.
We couldn't conceive previously this kind of actions undertaken by Europe.
Cred că și pe parcursul acestui conflict, țările din flancul estic și-au schimbat și gradul de angajament, dar și au reușit să ceară comunității internaționale să fie mult mai hotărâtă, inclusiv în a întări spațiul flancului estic, dar și pentru tipul de ajutoare pentru Ucraina.
I think during this conflict also the eastern flank has changed its attitude, its commitment. We can see the countries from the eastern flank that they started changing their behavior and asking the entire international community to support and strengthen the eastern flank.
Cred că strategia NATO, chiar dacă s-a schimbat progresiv, a fost coerentă încă de la început, nu a folosit mai degrabă evenimente ca motive, ca pretexte, ci a fost coerentă în tot acest timp.
I think the NATO strategy, despite the fact that it has changed progressively, it has shown a sort of coherence in all the actions undertaken, and it hasn't used pretexts to undertake offensive actions.
Evenimente cum au fost cele de la Bucea, de exemplu, schimbă radical, sigur, și viziunea lumii asupra acestui război.
The events such as the one in Bucha changes radically the attitude of the world towards the conflict.
Second question goes to Sky News.
Thank you. Joe Pike from Sky News. Secretary of State, you said there that targeting civilian infrastructure is a war crime. Are you saying explicitly that what has happened in Kramatorsk is a war crime? And what is the UK doing in terms of lethal aid in response? Will this include armoured vehicles, and will this include anti-ship missiles?
Well, look, what constitutes a war crime is set out in a range of statutes, including the Geneva Conventions, etc. If proved, then of course that power, Russia, would be guilty of a war crime. We've already seen a number of allegations, and unlike the Russian state, we collect evidence and then present that evidence to be proved to make sure that whether someone's guilty or not of a war crime. That's the difference between them and us. So as much as I'm tempted to say here and now, yes, I think the key is the circumstantial evidence absolutely points to a range of war crimes being committed by Russia. That's why we're collecting the evidence. That's why the ICC, the International Criminal Court, has started collecting that process and investigating. And that's why a number of countries, the United Kingdom, Canada, etc., are collecting that evidence. But I don't think there's any doubt, if you look at the previous record in Syria, in Grozny and places like that, in Chechnya, that part of the Russian playbook is when it doesn't go well, just start taking it out on the civilians and start destroying all the infrastructure. I mean, there's almost nothing left in Mariupol as a result of Russians' ambitions, and I think that's what we shouldn't forget. This is not Ukraine fighting for basic sort of dispute. This is Ukraine fighting for its survival. This is the Ukrainian people fighting for their survival. Russia doesn't seem to care about the infrastructure that's destroyed in Mariupol. It's not interested in that. And I think that's why it's worrying. I think the reality is that what Putin doesn't seem to recognize, every time he does this, the international community, and let's not forget the vote yesterday in the Human Rights Council to expel Russia, actually responds the opposite of what he wants. You know, there will be more lethal aid as a result of this. There will be more forces on the borders of NATO. There may be more NATO members as a result of Putin's actions. That's what he got wrong in 2014. It's what he got wrong in 2008. The consequences are always the opposite of what he hopes to achieve. And I think what I will say is that Britain is continuous. We're not just going in stops and starts. Our commitment to support Ukraine is to make sure that they have as much as possible the help they need to defend themselves. And if the tactics of the Russians change, what we give them will change as well. But all of us are leaning in. I've hosted 2 international donor conferences. Vasily attended them as well. The number of states ranging from Portugal to the neighbouring Baltic states have been contributing significantly, and that will continue. I won't discuss different types of weapon systems. I don't want to flag to Russians any changes until they've happened. But we've already committed from the NLAWs at the beginning to the very high velocity missiles, anti-air missiles, which was a step increase, which are now deployed and in Ukraine. And if there's any more, I'll keep Parliament updated.
We still have time for 2 more questions. Let's go with the...
We've been hearing from Defence Secretary Ben Wallace, who's in Romania, updating us about what the UK is going to be doing and following that attack on the train station in Kramatorsk this morning. Ben Wallace said that precision missiles aimed at people trying to leave were used, which constitutes a war crime. He said that Putin is building a cage around himself and that sanctions must not be lifted, not least because Putin cannot be provoked anymore because he doesn't care about his own people. We also heard from Sky's Joe Pike asking a question about war crimes and what more weapons will be used. We'll hear from him a little bit later on.